Hello, I'm Nick Robe. I'm working with Professor Ravi Jagadishan as a postdoc at Monash University, studying Brownian dynamic simulations of associating star polymer networks. This project we're carrying out in collaboration with Gareth McKinley at MIT. I should point out that I normally ask to be interrupted during my presentations, but that's impractical in this particular format. I am located in Australia though, so if you do email me right here, I may take a moment to respond. That's because I'm asleep, not because I'm not eager to talk. So getting into it, our group in general is interested in the relationship between microscopic molecular properties and macroscopic material properties. At present, there are a lot of ways to construct particular molecules and then measure what sort of material properties those molecules produce. But what there's not a good way to do is predict what those properties will be just based on the properties of the molecules alone. Furthermore, without that sort of mapping, it's impossible presently to generally state an engineering problem of material property that you want to have, and then concoct a molecule to produce that property. So this is the problem in a broad sense that we're interested in working on, of improving this mapping to improve the design process for predicting material properties. The specific system that we're interested right now is the system of star polymers. So instead of just a linear chain, we have this branch with 4 arms per molecule, and then associative groups on the ends of the molecules to form crosslinks between stars. Depending on the particular chemistry of the solution, this can produce vastly different networks and material properties. We're particularly interested in this case where we have reversible links between the chains. If the links are more permanent, more like a covalent network, then you can still get interesting elastic properties, but the viscosity is less controllable. Particularly, we're also interested in the case where there are 2 species of sticker, A and B, and A stickers can't stick to themselves, they can only stick to B, and furthermore, they can only associate singly. There's a limited functionality in that association. If you don't limit the functionality, then you can have this case right here where you have multiple stickers associated to the same point. And if you don't have this AB type, then you can have this situation where a particular star can associate with itself and form shorter loops instead of a network structure. So this ideal reversible network has very uniform homogeneous properties that experiments have shown are highly controllable. Particularly, this experiment showed that by tuning the pH and temperature of a solution, effectively modulating the interaction strength between the stars, they could tune the relaxation time of the solution. But once those things were fixed, then they could continue to adjust the concentration and molecular weight of the molecules to adjust the instantaneous shear modulus, for instance, of the system. So this gave them a lot of control of the material properties and an interesting insight into this map between macroscopic and microscopic behavior. What we can do in our simulations is we can probe this picture. Experimentalists have proposed this model to sort of interpret what's going on in their systems, but we can actually visualize it directly by simulating these molecules and seeing what they're doing. Once we have a good sort of emulation of this process, then we can extend our simulation into regimes where this simple model becomes difficult to describe in nonlinear flow and things like this. Furthermore, then we can rapidly search this space for new behaviors without having to do exhaustive numbers of experiments. So this is a schematic of what our model system looks like. We're doing Brownian dynamic simulations. So we have a number of beads composing each molecule connected by finite extensible springs. We have 3 types of beads. We have these backbone beads that I've drawn in black that feel just an excluded volume interaction with any other kind of bead. And then there's these 2 types of stickers that that just feel an excluded volume interaction with themselves, but when there's a cross interaction between the 2 different species, then we have a different, stronger interaction. The potential that we're using to model the associations between these beads is a modified Leonard-Jones potential due to Soderman, Doenbeck, and Kramer. The repulsive core of this potential is just a Leonard-Jones, but the potential is modified by this, modified uniformly by this constant epsilon, which determines a well depth for the associative part of the interaction. Then the associative regime the attractive regime is determined by this cosine function, which has the advantage that it smoothly goes to 0 at this cutoff radius RC, whereas the classic Lennard-Jones potential has an extremely long-range component of its interaction. So what we can do now is we can adjust the well depth of this potential to have an assortment of different interaction strengths within one simulation using the same interaction potential without worrying about changing either the repulsive core or the long-range component of these interactions. Some important numbers: epsilon 0, we have no attractive component of the interaction, and it's just a repulsive Lennard-Jones potential. At a well depth of 0.45, previous work in our group has shown that if an entire chain has this well depth, then we reproduce a theta solvent, and anything more than that produces a poor solvent condition. If we go much deeper, beyond about a well depth of about 3, then we get more long-term associative interactions where the stickers actually reside near each other for extended periods of time. So in the simulations I'm talking about today, the excluded volume interaction is epsilon 0, and the sticker interactions are somewhere between 2 and 10, depending on the particular instance. There's one other detail of our implementation that's very important. I mentioned that it's important that these stickers can't associate to more than one other bead at a time. The importance of this is that even if two blue beads can't stick to each other directly, if a blue bead can associate with multiple green beads, and those green beads can then associate with multiple blue beads, then we could quickly build up this combined interaction between all these beads that forms this cluster that just collapses instead of forming the nice network that we're interested in. To actually achieve this in simulation, we have to modify our neighbor list a little bit. So if we were looking at bead 6 here, it automatically feels the excluded volume interaction with all the black beads and any other green beads that are nearby. But if there's multiple blue beads nearby, then we have to only calculate the associative interaction for one of those beads, and the rest just feel the excluded volume interaction. So this is an animation of what the dynamics in our simulation look like for 2 stars. I've colored the green and blue bubbles here to represent the green and blue stickers for 2 different stars. I've drawn a thick red line connecting 2 stickers if they're within that cutoff radius, and so they're associated. So this shows you that our associations are fairly long-lived, but they are reversible. They can fall together and break apart. And also this demonstrates, you may notice that there's a second red line that appears intermittently, that it is possible to have 2 arms of the same pair of stars connecting with each other if the stickers happen to run into each other. This very fine-grained animation, though, becomes intractable if we have more than 2 stars in the simulation box. So what we can do is, instead of drawing every bead, I can just draw a bubble representing the radius of gyration of a particular star at a particular moment in time. And then we can even forego drawing the chains themselves and just draw a line connecting these bubbles if any arm of these stars have associated. I'll point out that this is just for animation. The underlying simulation still does have all of those beads still being simulated. So now that we have this nice way to render these animations, I can show you a system with many more stars. So this is a system with 100 stars and periodic boundary conditions. The well depth here is 6, and the concentration is 0.3 of the overlap concentration. You can see the network formed here by a number of associations between adjacent stars. You'll notice that only green and blue beads can form associations. So if you trace a line through this network, you'll see that every other stop is at an alternating color of bead. I've also colored the largest component of the largest connected component of this system in red. So if you notice a black bond, then that one is one that is not actually connected to the largest component in the system. If you happen to notice a red bit that doesn't look like it's connected, that's because I haven't drawn the bonds that wrap around the periodic boundary conditions in the system. I can show you another case at a little bit higher sticker strength and higher concentration. You can see the system is much more rigid. The bonds are much longer lasting. And the connected component of this network fills the system most of the time. I can go the other direction and show you lower concentration and a lower sticker strength, and you can see that there isn't a persistent large cluster, that the bonds are very short-lived and the stars are much more mobile. So there are a number of ways we can analyze these systems. In the experiment by Prada and Zhao, they discuss the reaction rate between these species, where we have A and B stickers that can convert to this C complex. And there's some activation energy to form that complex and some activation energy to break out of it. In our simulations, this activation energy is 0. And so we don't really have this forward term in the reaction rate. That's just constant. But by tuning the well depth, we can tune the reverse reaction rate with that EA minus. From these reaction rates, you can get at an equilibrium sticker conversion rate, the fraction of stickers that are stuck at any point in time. You can do further analysis to find quantities like the fraction of stars that are part of that system spanning cluster, or the average number of stars in a cluster if we have small clusters in the system. You can note from this expression that if the probability of a sticker being stuck, that conversion ratio, is higher than 1 over the number of arms on our star minus 1, F is the functionality of the star as a whole, then the average cluster size diverges and we get a system spanning network, or a gel. So in our case, F is 4, excuse me, so any sticker conversion rate higher than 1/3 form a gel. Instead of visualizing our systems as this 3-dimensional network, we can just show you the abstract topological graph, just showing each node is a star and each edge is a connection between those stars, regardless of their position in the system. And you can see as we change these parameters, sticker strength and concentration, we get larger and larger clusters forming to the point of one monolithic cluster spanning the system. Once we have this topological information, it's very easy to analyze things like the probability of stickers being stuck at all, or the probability of them being part of that largest cluster, and the number of edges per node, and things like this. So that sticker conversion rate here depends on the sticker strength and concentration monotonically, obviously, with stronger stickers and higher concentration increasing the conversion. We can expand these curves onto a surface and show that surface of P1/3, that should be our transition between gel system and not a gel. I've drawn points here representing our actual simulation data, and then I've interpolated a curve between them. And then we can look at that surface from the top down, and you can see this sort of empirical schematic of where the gel transition should be. So we can break this down even further than just the raw probability that a sticker is stuck into the probability for a star as a whole having a particular number of associations. A number of analyses in the past have looked at the elastic modulus that would be created by a particular network structure. If you consider the arms of a chain and how they contribute elastically to the system, the material as a whole, then you find that chain stars that only have 1 or 2 cross-linked arms don't contribute elastically. They do contribute to the geometrical or the conductivity percolation of the network, but they don't contribute to the rigidity percolation of the network. And so we're only interested in stars that have 3 or 4 arms connected to the gel network. Further, this diagram sort of demonstrates that if you have a star with all 4 arms connected to the gel versus 2 stars with 3 arms connected to the gel, then the topological contribution to the network is the same, even though the number of stars involved is twice as many. And so if we were trying to count the number of active chains per star, then these chains only count per star half as much as the arms of a quadruply connected star. So if we were counting the concentration of elastically active chains in the system, we have 4 chains per quadruply connected star, but 3 divided by 2 chains per star that only has 3 associations. Then this concentration of elastically active chains should be proportional to the elastic modulus in the system. So we can look at these probabilities for stars having different numbers of associations. Obviously, at the lowest concentrations and lowest well depths, there's a much higher probability that the star is not associated at all, or maybe only has 1 association. But as we move towards higher and higher sticker strengths and concentrations, we have this, this sort of wave that moves across the diagram of more and more probability towards higher numbers of associations. We can then just look at the 3 and 4 arm star, 3 and 4 connection stars that contribute to the elastic properties of the system. And we can see here the total number of elastically active chains in our system as a function of the well depth and the concentration. We would like now to move into comparing these, this concentration of elastically active chains with the shear modulus of our system directly. In the experiment, they can't actually measure directly the number of elastically active chains, but they can measure the shear modulus and relaxation time and properties like this. We could measure these things if we could do dynamic simulations over long time scales with our model system. You can see here some of the experimental results that show that this system does behave as a nearly ideal Maxwell element with a finely resolved relaxation time and instantaneous modulus. So hopefully we should be able to do very simple stress relaxation simulations to measure these quantities as well, and then we can directly compare both sides of this equation with elastically active chains and the reaction rates, and also the relaxation times and modulus of the system. But in order to do that, we need to improve the power of our simulations, because these dynamic quantities might involve hydrodynamic interactions, and those are much more computationally expensive. So we're looking to improve our simulations using GPUs. So there's this GPU-based many particle simulation toolkit called HUMD-BLUE, developed by Sharon Glotzer's group out of the University of Michigan. It has a number of bond types and pairwise forces built in, but we have to modify it to include this constraint that a sticker bead can only stick to one other sticker at a time. There's also a plugin designed for HUMD, designed by Jim Swan's group at MIT, to efficiently compute the hydrodynamic interactions between beads in these GPU simulations, and it also includes a number of shear flow conditions built in. So we're looking to combine these two tools to improve our simulations to study the dynamics of these sticky star networks. I should quickly acknowledge some resources that I've been using, and then I'll leave you with one thing as I wrap up. This project was funded by the Australian Research Council's Discovery Projects. Also, we've been using the National Computing Infrastructure here at Australia, and the computing resources provided by Monash University, which we're extremely grateful for. Finally, I showed you this phase diagram of where we do and do not expect to see a gel depending on concentration C by C star. Here, I've drawn a number of instances of my simulations where concentration varies horizontally, and then the well depth varies vertically. And I've colored, instead of coloring my orbs by their sticker type, I've colored them orange if they're part of the largest connected component in the system, and blue if they're not. Whether or not they're associated, they're blue if they're not connected to the largest component. So this sort of visually demonstrates that we've sort of zeroed in on the regime where there's this transition between gel and not a gel. And now that we've wrapped ourselves around this piece of parameter space, we're well positioned to explore these systems further. Thank you for your attention.